Carly, 28 years old, stared at her phone, the screen's glow illuminating the silent tears streaming down her face. The message from her mother, Evelyn, felt like a physical blow. "We've all agreed it's best if you stay out of the family from now on." Just an hour ago, she had been celebrating her promotion at a downtown bar with her best friend, unaware that her entire world was about to implode. The message was followed by another, this time from her older sister Felicity, a single devastating photo of Carly's fiancé Daniel kissing Felicity in what was unmistakably Carly's own living room. Carly's fingers trembled as she typed back a single word to her mother's group chat: "Why?" Before we dive into this story of betrayal and revenge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If this is your first time here, consider hitting that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about family. Now let's go back to that moment. The moment my world shattered. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white as I drove home, the engine of my old sedan a low hum against the chaos in my head. The phone sat on the passenger seat, a dark mirror reflecting my own pale, horrified face. My sister, my fiancé, my own living room, the one where Daniel and I had spent countless nights planning our future, now the scene of a crime I couldn't comprehend. The celebration for my promotion to senior marketing director felt like a lifetime ago, a memory from another person's life. My best friend had bought me a congratulatory drink, her smile genuine, her pride in me, a warm contrast to the cold dread now seeping into my bones. I had been so happy, so full of hope for the life Daniel and I were building. I remembered showing her a picture of the paint samples I'd picked out for the nursery, a room we weren't even planning to need for a couple of years, but we were dreamers, we were planners. Now every dream felt like a lie. When I finally pulled into the parking spot outside our apartment building, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. I sat there for a long moment, the silence of the car pressing in on me, trying to prepare myself for what I was about to walk into. But there was no preparation for this. There was no manual for how to handle the complete and utter annihilation of your life by the two people you were supposed to trust the most. I took a deep breath, the air catching in my throat, and forced myself out of the car. The elevator ride up to our floor was the longest of my life, the soft music a cruel mockery of the storm raging inside me. When I reached our door, my key felt heavy in my hand, a foreign object. I unlocked it and stepped inside. And there they were. Daniel was standing by the fireplace, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand, looking more annoyed than guilty. And Felicity, my sister, was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked underneath her, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She looked completely at home. In my home. The air was thick with a strange tension, a cocktail of defiance and expectation. They were waiting for me. They knew I was coming. "Carly." Daniel started, his voice devoid of any emotion. "We need to talk." I couldn't speak. I just stood there, my eyes darting between them, the photo on my phone burning into my retinas. Felicity finally spoke, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness that made my stomach churn. "Oh, don't look so surprised, little sister. Did you really think it would last forever?" She stood up and walked over to Daniel, wrapping her arm around his waist. He didn't pull away. "Daniel and I are in love," she said, her eyes locked on mine, a glint of triumph in them. "We've always been in love. You were just, well, you were convenient. A placeholder, you know, until I was ready to settle down." The words hit me like a physical slap. A placeholder. All those years, all the memories, the shared secrets, the late-night talks, the inside jokes, all of it was a lie. I was a stepping stone for my own sister. I finally found my voice, a raw, broken sound I barely recognized as my own. "How long?" I asked, my eyes fixed on Daniel, the man I was supposed to marry in 3 months. He had the decency to look away, a flicker of shame crossing his face before he hardened his expression. "It doesn't matter how long," he said, his voice cold. "What matters is that we're together now, and we want you to leave." Felicity chimed in again, her voice like poison. "We've already talked to Mom and Dad. They understand. They agree with us." That was it. That was the second blow, even more devastating than the first. My family knew. My family was on their side. I stumbled back, my hand reaching for the wall to steady myself. The room was spinning. I had to get out. I had to think. I turned and walked out of the apartment, not even bothering to close the door behind me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I ended up at a park a few blocks away, sitting on a bench in the dark. The cold night air, a welcome shock to my system. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. My fingers fumbling with the screen. She answered on the second ring, her voice clipped and impatient. "Carly, what is it? I'm in the middle of something." "Mom." I choked out the tears, finally breaking free. "Felicity and Daniel. They. How could you?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Carly, please don't be so dramatic. Felicity and Daniel make more sense as a couple. They're more compatible. You have to admit you've always been a bit intense." Intense. That's what she called me. Intense. Because I loved deeply. Because I was loyal. Because I cared. "But she's my sister," I sobbed. "He's my fiancé." "And we're your family," she said, her voice hardening. "And we've decided that this is for the best. We're trying to avoid a messy scandal, so please just accept it and move on." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone a mournful wail in the darkness. My family had known. They had chosen sides, and they had chosen them over me. The next day, Daniel dropped the final bombshell. He came to the cheap motel room I had rented for the night, his face a mask of cold indifference. He handed me a piece of paper. It was a notice to vacate the apartment. The down payment for the house. He said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "It was all my money. My name is the only one on the deed. So you need to get your things out of the apartment by the weekend. Felicity and I are moving in." I couldn't believe it. All those years of saving, all the extra hours I had worked at my old job, all the sacrifices I had made to save up for that down payment. It was all for nothing. He had tricked me. He had lied to me. And now he was kicking me out onto the street. I was completely and utterly alone. I had no one. No home, no money, no family. I was nothing. I called my younger brother Bradley my last hope. He was the only one who had ever seemed to understand me, the only one who had ever shown me any real affection. He answered, his voice a nervous whisper. "Carly, what's wrong?" "Bradley." I begged, my voice cracking. "Please, you have to help me. They've taken everything. Mom and Felicity and Daniel. They've kicked me out." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he spoke, his voice barely audible. "Carly, just let it go for now. They'll destroy you. Please just stay away." And then he hung up. I was truly alone. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the scratchy blanket, a small comfort against the overwhelming despair. I had nothing. I had no one. But then a strange feeling started to bubble up inside me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was anger. A cold, hard, righteous anger. They had taken everything from me. They had tried to break me, but they had failed. I picked up my phone, my hands no longer shaking. I opened the family group chat, the one that had started this whole nightmare, and I replied to my mother's message not with a question, but with a statement. "You have no idea what you've just started." The anger that had surged through me in that motel room was not a fleeting emotion. It was a fire that had been lit in the deepest, most desolate part of my soul, and it was not going to be extinguished. It was a fuel, a purpose. The statement I had sent to my family's group chat was not an empty threat. It was a declaration of war. I was no longer the victim, the placeholder, the intense one they could discard. I was a survivor, and I was going to fight back. But I was also smart enough to know that I couldn't do it alone. I was a marketing director, not a lawyer, not a private investigator. I needed an ally, someone who understood the rules of the game they were playing, someone who was not afraid to get their hands dirty. I remembered my late father's old friend Arthur. He was a lawyer, a man with a reputation for being sharp, no-nonsense, and fiercely loyal to those he considered his own. My father had always spoken of him with a deep respect, and I knew that if anyone would help me, it would be him. I found his number in my old contacts, my heart pounding in my chest as I dialed. He answered on the first ring, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "Arthur speaking." "Arthur, this is Carly Montgomery, Richard's daughter." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then his voice softened, a hint of warmth in it. "Carly, it's been a long time. How are you?" I took a deep breath and launched into the story, my voice a torrent of pain and fury. I told him everything: the affair, the text message from my mother, the house, the eviction notice. I didn't hold back. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I laid it all out raw and unfiltered. When I was finished, there was a long silence. I held my breath, waiting for his response. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and serious. "Carly, what they've done to you is despicable, and I'm going to help you. Pro bono. Out of respect for your father." A wave of relief washed over me, so intense it almost brought me to my knees. I had an ally. I had a chance. "But you have to understand," he continued, his voice firm. "They're playing dirty, Carly. If you want to fight back, you have to be smarter, not louder." His words became my mantra. Smarter, not louder. My first move with Arthur's guidance was to gather evidence. I had been so focused on the emotional side of the betrayal that I hadn't even considered the legal implications. But Arthur was right. There was a paper trail, and I was going to find it. I spent the next few days in a blur of activity, digging through old bank statements, emails, and text messages, and I found it. A loophole. A small, insignificant detail that Daniel, in his arrogance, had overlooked. While he had paid the down payment for the house, I had been paying all the utilities, property taxes, and homeowners insurance from a joint account we had set up for household expenses. I also had extensive records of all the improvements I had made to the house, from the new kitchen cabinets to the freshly painted walls. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. Arthur was impressed. "This is good, Carly." He said, his voice a low rumble over the phone. "This is very good. We can use this." And we did. We filed a lien on the property, a legal claim that would prevent Daniel and Felicity from selling or refinancing the house until the dispute was resolved. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. It was a message to them that I was not going to go down without a fight. The family's reaction was swift and brutal. My mother called me, her voice a shrill scream of rage. "How could you?" she shrieked. "How could you do this to your own family? You're vindictive, Carly. You're tearing this family apart." I just laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "I'm tearing this family apart. Mom, you're the one who sent me a text message telling me to stay out of the family. You're the one who chose Felicity over me. You're the one who let them kick me out of my own home. So don't you dare talk to me about tearing this family apart." I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was standing up to her. I was not going to be her victim anymore. Felicity, of course, had to get in on the action. She sent me a series of venomous texts calling me a pathetic loser and a bitter old maid. I just blocked her number. Her words had no power over me anymore. They were just the desperate cries of a person who knew she was losing. But I was about to find out that my family's cruelty ran much deeper than I had ever imagined. I needed to retrieve some important documents from my childhood home, the place where my mother still lived. It was a risk, but I had no other choice. I needed my birth certificate, my social security card, my passport. All the things I would need to start a new life. I went hoping against hope that I would find a sliver of maternal support, a glimmer of the mother I used to know. But I should have known better. When I walked in, I found my mother, Felicity, and my uncle Raymond, my mother's brother, waiting for me in the living room. The air was thick with a palpable tension, a sense of foreboding that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Raymond was a man I had always admired and respected. He was a successful businessman, a pillar of the community, a man who had always seemed to have it all together. He had always been kind to me, always been the one to offer a word of encouragement or a pat on the back. But now as he stood there, his face a cold, hard mask, I saw a side of him I had never seen before. "Carly," he said, his voice calm and measured. "We need to talk." I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Your behavior is unacceptable." He continued, his eyes locked on mine. "This lawsuit, this public spectacle, it's not who we are as a family. We're a private people, Carly. We don't air our dirty laundry in public." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was lecturing me about family values after what they had done to me. "You have no right to talk to me about family." I shot back, my voice shaking with rage. "You have no idea what they've done to me." He just shook his head, a look of pity on his face that was far more insulting than any anger. "Carly, you're not thinking clearly. You're acting out of grief and anger, and you're making a terrible mistake." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper. "If you don't drop this lawsuit, I will use my connections to have you professionally blacklisted in this city. You'll never work in marketing again. You'll be a pariah. No one will hire you. No one will want to be associated with you." The threat hung in the air, a dark cloud of suffocating power. I knew he was serious. I knew he had the power to do it. He was Raymond Montgomery, a man with friends in high places. I was just Carly, a girl with a broken heart and a lien on a house she didn't even own. This was the second shocking betrayal from a man I had trusted, a man I had looked up to. This was my near-defeat moment number one. I felt the walls closing in on me, the weight of my family's power crushing me. I was a small boat in a raging storm, and I was about to be swallowed by the waves. I turned and walked out of the house, my head held high, but inside I was shaking. I got into my car and drove, not knowing where I was going, just knowing that I had to get away. I pulled over to the side of the road, the tears finally breaking free, a torrent of pain and despair. I had been so sure of myself, so sure of my plan, but I was no match for them. They were too powerful, too ruthless. I was going to lose. I was going to lose everything. But then Arthur's words echoed in my mind. "Smarter, not louder." I wiped my tears, a new, more dangerous plan forming in my mind. I couldn't win by attacking their finances. I had to attack their reputation, the one thing they valued more than anything in the world. I was going to expose them for the hypocrites and liars they were, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. The chilling threat from my Uncle Raymond had been a stark reminder of the battlefield I was on. This was not just a family squabble. It was a war of power and influence, and I was a lone soldier with limited resources. The anger that had fueled my initial counterattack had been tempered by a cold, hard dose of reality. I needed more than just a lien on a house. I needed ammunition. I needed a way to fight back that didn't rely on a legal system that could be so easily manipulated by the wealthy and well-connected. My mind raced, searching for a weak link in their seemingly impenetrable armor. And then I thought of Bradley. My younger brother, the one who had told me to just let it go. I knew he was trapped. He was the youngest, the most easily manipulated, and he was terrified of our mother and Raymond. But he was also my brother. And deep down, I knew he had a conscience. I had to try again, but this time I couldn't approach him as a victim begging for help. I had to approach him as an equal, as an ally. I called him, my heart pounding in my chest. He answered, his voice a nervous whisper. Carly, what's wrong? You shouldn't be calling me. Bradley, listen to me. I said, my voice low and steady. I'm not calling to ask for your help. I'm calling to offer you a way out. I could hear the confusion in his silence. What are you talking about? I know about the family business. I said, taking a leap of faith. I know it's failing. I know Raymond is pressuring you to take it over to clean up his mess. I know you don't want to. I know you're scared. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then he let out a long, shaky breath. How do you know that? I know things, Bradley. I said, my voice firm. And I know you're not like them. You don't have the stomach for their games. So I'm going to make you a deal. You help me, and I'll help you. I'll help you get away from them. I'll help you build a new life, a life where you don't have to look over your shoulder every 5 seconds. I could hear the conflict in his voice, the war between his fear and his desire for freedom. What do you want me to do? He finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want you to be my eyes and ears, I said. I want you to be my man on the inside. And just like that, I had a spy. Bradley became my secret weapon, my source of information from the belly of the beast. He was terrified, but he was also desperate. And desperation can be a powerful motivator. He started feeding me information, small crumbs at first, then a steady stream of damaging intel. He sent me copies of Raymond's shady business deals, evidence of his under-the-table payments and offshore accounts. He told me about Felicity's long history of infidelity, not just with Daniel, but with a string of other men, a secret life she had carefully hidden behind her good girl facade. He even managed to get me a copy of the prenuptial agreement Daniel had signed with Felicity, a document that proved their relationship was based on a cold, calculated financial transaction, not love. But the most damaging piece of information, the one that would change everything, was the one he revealed with a trembling voice over a late-night phone call. Carly, there's something else. He said, his voice barely a whisper. Something big. Raymond. He's not the successful businessman everyone thinks he is. He's embezzling from the family company. He's been doing it for years. He's got massive gambling debts, and the company is on the brink of collapse. The news hit me like a thunderbolt. Raymond, the pillar of the community. The man who had threatened to ruin my life, was a fraud. His entire empire was built on a foundation of lies and deceit. This was it. This was the chink in their armor. This was the weapon I needed to bring them down. I immediately shared the information with Arthur, my lawyer. He was as shocked as I was, but he also saw the opportunity. This is it, Carly. He said, his voice a low, excited rumble. This is the smoking gun. We can take him down with this. He connected me with a forensic accountant, a sharp, detail-oriented woman named Sarah, who had a knack for following the money. We gave her all the information Bradley had provided, and she got to work digging deeper into Raymond's financial records, uncovering a web of fraud and deception so vast it was almost unbelievable. I felt a surge of hope, a feeling that I was finally getting the upper hand. But I was about to learn that even the most trusted allies can have their own agenda. Arthur, the man who had been my rock, my guide through this legal minefield, was about to betray me. Not out of malice, but out of a misguided sense of protecting me. He saw the extent of Raymond's crimes, the sheer scale of the fraud, and he panicked. He was afraid of what it would do to me, what it would do to my family, what it would do to my father's legacy. So he made a decision that would change everything. He went to my mother. He sat her down in his fancy office with its mahogany desk and leather chairs, and he laid it all out for her. He told her about Raymond's embezzlement, his gambling debts, the imminent collapse of the company. He told her that I had the evidence, that I was planning to go public with it. He thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was giving her a chance to handle it internally to spare the family the public humiliation of a scandal. He thought he was being smarter, not louder. But he was wrong. He was so, so wrong. My mother, in her infinite wisdom and her desperate need to protect the family's name at all costs, did not turn Raymond in. She did not confront him with the truth. She did not try to fix the problem. She did the only thing she knew how to do. She rallied the family. She gathered her troops and she pointed them all in one direction, at me. They framed me. They went to the police with tears in their eyes, and a story so convincing, so full of manufactured evidence and false testimony, that it was almost believable. They painted me as a bitter, unstable woman, a girl who had never gotten over her father's death, a girl who was trying to destroy her family out of spite. They had evidence, of course. They had my access to Arthur's files, my conversations with the forensic accountant, my motive of revenge. They had it all. This was the third most devastating betrayal. Not from a family member, but from the one person I thought was truly on my side. The one person I had trusted to help me get justice. I was arrested. The police came to my small rented room, their faces grim, their hands on their weapons. They read me my rights. The words a blur of meaningless sound. The evidence against me, fabricated by my own family, was damning. I was taken to the police station, my hands cuffed behind my back, the cold metal a stark reminder of my new reality. I sat in an interrogation room, the gray walls closing in on me, the one-way mirror, a silent, judgmental eye. I was about to take the fall for a crime I didn't commit. I was about to lose everything. Again. This was my near-defeat moment number 2. I was trapped with no way out. But then a strange calm came over me. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was mixed with a new steely resolve. I was not going to let them win. I was not going to let them destroy me. I had one phone call, one chance to turn the tables. I thought of Arthur, of my family, of the life they had tried to steal from me. And then I thought of a number Bradley had given me, a number he had told me to use only in an emergency. A contact for a ruthless investigative journalist named Sloane, a woman known for her take-no-prisoners approach to corporate fraud. I picked up the phone, my hand steady, my voice clear, and I made the call that would change everything. The sound of the cell door closing behind me was a final, definitive clang, the sound of a life being stolen. But as I sat on the cold, hard bunk staring at the gray concrete walls, I didn't feel despair. I felt a cold, clear sense of purpose. The interrogation had been a brutal dance of lies and manipulation, my family's words, a carefully constructed web of deceit designed to entrap me. They had played their part perfectly, the grieving mother, the concerned sister, the betrayed fiancé, all painting a picture of a woman on the edge, a woman who would stop at nothing to get revenge. And the police had believed them. Why wouldn't they? They were the Montgomerys, a respected family, a pillar of the community. And I was the disgraced daughter, the woman who had been publicly airing her dirty laundry, the woman who had a motive. The evidence against me was overwhelming, a mountain of fabricated documents and false testimony. I was trapped with no way out. But I had one card left to play. One last desperate gamble. The phone call to Sloane, the investigative journalist, had been a shot in the dark, a Hail Mary pass in the final seconds of the game. I didn't know if she would believe me, if she would even take my call. But I had to try. I had to fight back. And so I told her everything. I laid it all out, the whole sordid story, from the initial betrayal to the final frame-up. I didn't hold back. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I gave her the names, the dates, the details. I gave her the ammunition she needed to take them down. And to my surprise, she listened. She didn't just listen, she heard me. She heard the pain in my voice, the desperation, but she also heard the steely resolve, the refusal to be a victim. She agreed to meet me, her sharp, intelligent eyes, sizing me up, her mind already working, already piecing together the story. "I'm not going to lie to you, Carly," she said, her voice a low, steady hum. "This is a long shot. Your family is powerful. They have resources, but I've been looking into Raymond Montgomery for a while now. There have been rumors, whispers about his business dealings. Your story just confirms what I already suspected. So yes, I'll help you. But you have to be prepared for a fight. A real fight." I was ready. I was more than ready. With Sloane's resources and her team of researchers, we went on the offensive. We didn't just gather evidence, we weaponized it. We started a blog, The Montgomery Files, a platform where we could tell our side of the story our way. We didn't just state facts, we told a story. A story of a family built on lies, hypocrisy, and cruelty. We posted redacted documents, timelines of the affair, and anonymous testimonies from former employees of Raymond's company. We painted a picture of a family that was not just dysfunctional, but dangerous. The blog went viral locally, the story a perfect storm of sex, money, and power. The Montgomerys were thrown into chaos. Their carefully constructed public image was crumbling, their pristine reputation being dragged through the mud. The phone calls started coming in from reporters, from old business associates, from people who had been wronged by the Montgomerys and were now eager to share their stories. The pressure was on. Raymond, in a panic, decided to deploy his secret weapon. He was a tech-savvy man, a man who understood the power of information, and he had been dabbling in the world of deepfakes, a technology that allowed him to create realistic videos of people saying and doing things they had never done. He created a video of me supposedly confessing to the embezzlement and threatening my family. It was sophisticated, it was believable, and it was devastating. He released it online and it spread like wildfire. For a moment, public opinion swung back against me. The comments on the blog turned ugly, the narrative shifting from poor Carly to crazy Carly. It was a brilliant, ruthless move, and it almost worked. But I was prepared for this. I knew my family would stoop to any level to win, and I had anticipated their desperation. I had Sloane's tech team working around the clock, analyzing the video, looking for the telltale signs of a deepfake. And they found them. They released a side-by-side comparison, exposing the deepfake for what it was. They pointed out the subtle inconsistencies, the digital artifacts, the proof that the video was a fake. And then they released the final nail in Raymond's coffin. Irrefutable proof of his massive gambling debts, the transfer of company funds to his personal accounts, the evidence of his long-running fraud. The deepfake attempt had completely backfired, destroying any remaining credibility the family had. The district attorney's office, armed with Sloane's evidence, opened a formal investigation into Raymond. The charges against me were dropped. I was released from jail, a free woman. As I stood outside the courthouse, the cameras flashing in my face, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just looked into the lens, my eyes cold and steady. "The truth has a way of coming out," I said, my voice clear and strong. "And we're just getting started." The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. I was no longer the one on the defensive. I was the one in control. And I was not going to stop until they had paid for what they had done to me. The DA's investigation was a slow, grinding process, but it was a relentless, unstoppable force. The evidence Sloane and her team had gathered was a mountain of undeniable truth, and it was crushing the Montgomery empire under its weight. The first domino to fall was Raymond's company. The board of directors, faced with the prospect of a criminal investigation and a public relations nightmare, forced him out. They tried to contain the damage, to distance themselves from him, but it was too late. The extent of his fraud was too vast, the stench of his corruption too strong. The company's stock plummeted, the investors panicked, and the creditors called in their loans. The financial empire that Raymond had built on a foundation of lies was crumbling, and it was taking the rest of the family down with it. The dream house, the one that had been the catalyst for this whole nightmare, was the next casualty. It was entangled in both my lien and the family's financial ruin, a symbol of their greed and my betrayal. It was foreclosed on a sad, empty shell of the life Daniel and I had planned. Daniel, who had quit his job when he thought he was about to be a wealthy man, was now unemployed and unemployable. His name was mud in the industry, his reputation destroyed by his association with the Montgomerys. He was a broken man, a shadow of his former self, his arrogance replaced by a desperate, pathetic need for sympathy. Felicity, once the golden child, the apple of everyone's eye, was now a pariah. Her friends had abandoned her, her social invitations had dried up, and her name was synonymous with betrayal and deceit. She was a social outcast, a woman with no future, no prospects, and no one to blame but herself. Their relationship, built on a foundation of lies and betrayal, began to sour under the pressure. The initial thrill of their forbidden romance had faded, replaced by a bitter, resentful reality. They blamed each other for their downfall, their once passionate love affair now a toxic cycle of accusations and recriminations. It was a fitting end for them, a just punishment for their crimes. But my mother, in her infinite wisdom and her desperate need to protect the family's name at all costs, was not going to go down without a fight. She was a cornered animal, and she was about to unleash her most vicious, most cruel attack yet. She made one last desperate move. She contacted my estranged paternal grandparents, people I hadn't seen since my father's death. They were good, decent people, people who had been cut out of my life by my mother's manipulation and control. She spun them a tale, a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, painting me as a mentally unstable monster, a girl who was trying to destroy her family out of grief for her father. She told them I was a danger to myself and others, that I needed to be institutionalized for my own good. She played on their love for me, their concern for my well-being, and she turned them against me. It was a brilliant, ruthless move, a masterclass in psychological warfare. She was not just trying to destroy my reputation. She was trying to destroy my mind, my very identity. She was trying to erase me. I was lured to a meeting under the pretense of reconciling with my grandparents. I was hesitant, but a part of me, a small, hopeful part, wanted to believe that they still loved me, that they would see the truth. But when I arrived, I found them along with my mother and a court-appointed psychiatrist waiting for me in a sterile, impersonal conference room. The air was thick with a palpable tension, a sense of foreboding that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My grandparents looked at me with a mixture of pity and concern, their eyes filled with a sadness that broke my heart. My mother, on the other hand, looked triumphant, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "Carly," my grandfather said, his voice a low, gentle rumble. "We're so glad you came. We're worried about you." My grandmother reached out and took my hand, her touch a small comfort against the cold dread that was seeping into my bones. "We love you, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "And we're here to help you." The psychiatrist, a stern, humorless woman with a clipboard, cleared her throat. "Carly," she said, her voice a clinical, detached monotone. "Your mother has expressed some concerns about your mental health. She believes you're a danger to yourself and others. We'd like you to consider voluntarily committing yourself to a psychiatric facility for evaluation." They presented me with papers, a stack of legal documents that would sign away my freedom, my identity, my life. This was it. This was the most cruel and personal attack yet. It was not about money or reputation. It was about trying to erase my sanity, my very essence. For a moment, seeing the genuine concern, however misguided, on my grandparents' faces, I faltered. I felt the old pain of my father's death, the years of loneliness, the feeling of being an outsider in my own family. This was my lowest point, a moment of pure psychological warfare. I was trapped with no way out. But then I remembered. I remembered the phone call I had made to Bradley, the one where I had asked him to be my spy. I remembered the little recording device he had given me, a tiny, almost invisible pin I had worn on my lapel. I remembered his warning. Just in case, Carly. Just in case they try something like this. I took a deep breath, the air catching in my throat. I looked at my mother not with anger, but with a chilling pity. I calmly took out my phone, my hand steady, my voice clear. Before I sign anything, I said, my voice a low, steady hum. I think you should all hear this. I pressed play, and the room fell silent. The recording started a clear, crisp audio of my mother and Raymond plotting this exact scheme, their voices a cold, calculating discussion of how to manipulate my grandparents, how to have me committed, how to silence me for good. I looked at my grandparents, their faces a mask of horror and disbelief. This is the woman you're trusting. I said, my voice a low, steady hum. This is the woman who is trying to destroy your own granddaughter, now who really needs help. The psychiatrist was horrified, her face a mask of shock and disgust. She immediately refused to cooperate, her professional ethics overriding my mother's manipulation. She filed a report against my mother, a report that would be the final nail in the coffin of the Montgomery family's public image. The incident became the final straw, the last desperate act of a woman who had lost everything. My grandparents were devastated, their hearts broken by the betrayal of the woman they had trusted for so long. They turned against her completely, their love for me finally overriding their loyalty to the family. They apologized profusely, their tears a cleansing rain that washed away the years of pain and resentment. They offered me financial support, but I refused. I didn't want their money. I wanted them to see the truth. And they did. They finally saw the truth. The recording of my mother and Raymond plotting to have me committed was the final definitive piece of evidence, the smoking gun that exposed the true depths of their depravity. Sloane, ever the journalist, saw the story for what it was, a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, a tale of a family so desperate to protect their secrets that they were willing to sacrifice one of their own. She published a blockbuster exposé titled The Montgomery Curse, a detailed, in-depth account of the family's downfall. It was a story of greed, betrayal, and cruelty, a story that resonated with a public that was hungry for a taste of justice. The article was a sensation, shared millions of times, read by people from all walks of life. It was the final nail in the coffin of the Montgomery family's public image, the last humiliating act in a long, drawn-out tragedy. The consequences were swift and severe. Raymond, already facing a criminal investigation for his financial crimes, was now also facing charges of conspiracy and attempted false imprisonment. He was arrested, his empire in ruins, his reputation destroyed. He was eventually sentenced to 20 years in prison, a just punishment for a lifetime of lies and deceit. My mother, faced with social ruin and potential charges for her role in the conspiracy, became a recluse, a ghost haunting the empty halls of her once grand home. Her power and influence were gone, her social standing a distant memory. She was a woman with nothing, a woman who had lost everything in her desperate attempt to protect the family's name. Felicity and Daniel, their relationship already in tatters, finally broke up for good. Felicity, unable to find a job and shunned by society, had to move in with a distant relative, a sad, pathetic shadow of her former self. Daniel, broke and disgraced, left the state, a broken man with no future, no prospects, and no one to blame but himself. My brother Bradley, with my help and the support of our grandparents, was able to legally and financially disentangle himself from the family. He started his own small business, a landscaping company, and began to build a new life, a life free from the shadow of the Montgomery name. He was finally free. And me, I was free too. free from the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty. Free from the weight of a family that had never truly loved me, but the victory felt hollow quiet. I had won, but I was also alone. The fight was over, but the scars remained. I had survived, but I was not unscathed. I agreed to one last meeting, but not with my mother. I met with my grandparents in a small, cozy cafe, a world away from the sterile, impersonal conference room where they had tried to have me committed. It was a tearful, emotional, and healing conversation. They apologized profusely, their hearts broken by the betrayal of the woman they had trusted for so long. They told me they were sorry for not seeing the truth sooner, for not being there for me when I needed them most. They offered me financial support, a way to rebuild my life, but I refused. I didn't want their money. I wanted them to see the truth. And they did. They finally saw the truth. A few days later, I received one last text from my mother. It was not an apology. It was a bitter, resentful message, a final, desperate attempt to wound me. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything. I looked at the phone, felt a flicker of the old pain, and then it was gone. I didn't reply. I simply blocked her number. I was done. I was finally truly free. The silence that followed the final blocked text message from my mother was not a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, a void where the chaos of the last few months had been. The fight was over, the battle was won, but the war had left its scars. I was free, but I was also alone. The initial feeling was not triumph, but exhaustion and a profound sense of loss. I had spent so much time and energy fighting, so much of myself focused on revenge, that I had forgotten how to just be. I struggled with insomnia, my mind racing with the memories of the betrayal, the cruelty, the lies. I was haunted by the faces of my family, the sound of their voices, the feeling of their betrayal. I was a soldier returning from a war, a soldier who didn't know how to live in a world that was no longer a battlefield. The silence in my new modest apartment was deafening, a constant reminder of the life I had lost, the family I had once had. I had won, but I was left to pick up the pieces of my life alone. I knew I needed help. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I started seeing a therapist, a kind, compassionate woman with a gentle smile and a patient ear. I told her everything, the whole story, from the initial betrayal to the final, brutal confrontation. She listened, her eyes full of empathy, her presence a calming balm on my raw, wounded soul. She helped me understand that my anger had been a shield, a way to protect myself from the pain. She helped me see that my family's actions were a reflection of their own brokenness, not my worth. She helped me to forgive, not for them, but for me. She helped me to let go. I also started to reconnect with myself. I rediscovered my love for painting, a hobby I had abandoned in my relationship with Daniel. I bought canvases and paints, and I started to create, to channel my turbulent emotions into my art. My art became a form of therapy, a way to express the pain, the anger, the sadness, and the hope that was slowly starting to bloom in my heart. My paintings were dark, chaotic, and beautiful, a reflection of my journey. I slowly started to rebuild my social circle. I joined a local art class and a hiking group, forming new friendships with people who knew nothing of my past. These relationships were simple, honest, and based on mutual respect, a stark contrast to the toxic, manipulative relationships I had with my family. I was learning to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of new connections, new experiences. My art started to get noticed. A local gallery owner saw my work and was impressed by its raw, emotional power. She offered to display my paintings in her gallery, and I sold my first piece. It was a dark, chaotic, but beautiful abstract painting titled Phoenix. It was a symbol of my journey, a testament to my resilience, my ability to rise from the ashes of my old life and create something new, something beautiful. I decided to use part of the proceeds to start a small scholarship fund for young people from difficult family backgrounds who wanted to pursue art. I found purpose not in my past, but in building a better future for others. Months later, I was in my small art studio, the sunlight streaming in the smell of turpentine and paint a familiar comfort. I was working on a new piece, one filled with light and color, a reflection of the hope that was now a permanent part of my life. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my grandfather, just a simple picture of a blooming flower in his garden with the caption, "Thinking of you." I smiled a genuine, peaceful smile. I replied, "Thinking of you too." I put the phone down, picked up my brush, and continued to paint. The past was a part of my story, but it was no longer my entire identity. I had survived, I had healed, and I was finally truly free. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut a family member out of your life? How did you find the strength to walk away? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences can help others who are going through the same thing. If you found this story inspiring, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of survival healing and finding your own strength. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the courage to write your own story of hope and redemption.